Hello, I'm Heather Gregg. My tagline is all the arts, all the time. And today I'm going to be talking to you about book habits. Why I would buy certain books, why I like them, why I don't like some, things that I regret buying, all those sort of nosy little questions. Okay, I want to think about why I would pick up a book in a bookstore or in a library. What would attract me and make me think this is going to be a good book? Well, first of all, there's the theme. This is a particular favourite of mine. Oxford Book of Humorous Prose, from William Caxton to P.G. Wodehouse, and the author, conducted tour by Frank Muir, who knows so much about the subject. Fantastic. Keep going back to that. It's a kind of a reference book. Or there's an unusual theme that you think, what is that book about? And for me, this is an example, Pictures and Tears. It's by James Elkins, who has really good art history cred, but he's thinking about why people stand in front of a picture and cry. And sometimes they don't know why, and he's kind of connected with people and asked them about that. Fascinating pictures and books and stories, human stories. I'm always here for a book about Matisse, but this grabbed me because it's about hidden context with Picasso, and it's about their rivalry and friendship, the story of their rivalry and friendship by Jack Flam. Not very deep in the sense of the length of the book itself, but really well illustrated so that you can see works that one artist has done and then the other has done and how they've influenced each other, and it's gone both ways during their lifetime. Great book. So that's the theme attracted me, plus trusting the writer. And this, who doesn't like reading letters? Letters of note. Letters by famous people and non-famous. Correspondence deserving of a wider audience, it's called. It's gathered together by Sean Usher. It's become a classic and there's now more books. The first one starts off with a scone recipe from Queen Elizabeth II, from Buckingham Palace, to the President of America, Dwight Eisenhower, who was interested in knowing the recipe for the scones he'd received at the palace, and duly it was written out and given to them. Again, this is the voice, this is people's voices writing, not suspecting that their letters are going to end up in a book and read by other people. And for that reason, it's incredibly direct communication. Fascinating, and every letter is different and written for a different reason to different people in a different style, but full of voice and the moment they're writing in. Now, for any reader, you're going to think about what books you're going to keep, what books you're going to buy, that you're going to keep and you reread. And I may have a few of those. In fact, spoiler alert, the books that are in my house have stayed there because they are bringing something to the party, so to speak. A few I want to show you. Great modern poets as examples. This anthology of the essential poets and poetry since 1900, which it is, and constant source of reference, very readable. A little bit of biography, a nice picture usually, and enough poems to get a sense of who they were, their biggest hits in a sense, but a great starting point. Look how readable that is, and you've suddenly read a lot of the 20th century poets that are key and influential. Similarly, Shock of the New, Art in a Century of Change by Robert Hughes. He is refreshing. If he likes something, he likes it and you know about it. If he doesn't like it, you know about it as well, but he will also reason why. And this is just such a great resource to have in his coverage, and it comes from a TV series, classic TV series, The Shock of the New, and it's just brilliant. Such a good overview. So it's a reference one, so that's a reason to keep a book. Another reason to keep a book. This is a catalogue of an exhibition I was at from Russia. Paintings from Russia. which had been seized under the revolution and so forth. And then we were now starting to see them. They came across to London, and I made a point of going to see them, and I did not regret it. And I didn't get an exhibition catalogue at the time, but later on this turned up as a possibility, and I'm just so delighted by it. And I learned my lesson. Buy a catalogue if you go to an exhibition, even if you don't love everything in the exhibition, because you will want to think about it again, and a catalogue, a well illustrated catalogue, brings it all back to you. Now, what about recommendations? Who do I trust, or who do I feel? Do I receive recommendations? I do over research a bit before I buy it. I don't have a huge book buying budget. And I have to think, do I really want this book? Is it going to add something? And my recommendations of other books. Once upon a time, I used to work in a library, in an academic library. And so one of the key books I've got was recommended by library staff, and I was saying, I'm so fed up reading the same books again and again and again, and they recommended this book. Let me just grab these recommended books. So, yeah. The British Museum is Falling Down, David Lodge, a recommendation from a fellow colleague at work, well worth it. Dorothy L. Sayers, recommended widely on BookTube, where we record these videos and show them, as one of the best books by Dorothy L. Sayers in the whole series on Lord Peter Wimsey. I read that recently with much enjoyment. And something I saw on TV, made into film, and then read the book, and the book is also fantastic. Elizabeth von Arnim, The Enchanted April. That's my book to give to anybody. It's just so good. And then recommendations from books that are like references. My comedy humour book earlier on that I had recommended this book, No Bed for Bacon, and gave a little excerpt from it. Carol Abrams and S.J. Simon. Fantastic. A big, good book that recommends other books and isn't an anthology is just such a great way to just taste little books and then know it's going to be good. Another way of books coming into your area is people actually choosing them for you. And at first that sounds horrendous, but actually some books I have were gifted to me by friends who know me really well for a very, very, very long time. And that's the one circumstance I think in which somebody could choose a book for me, or else that they are a book reviewer that's specialising in that area. So here, for example, we have a wonderful book on art. Obviously, from a friend who knows me really, really well. Also, I recently got a catalogue for an exhibition that I wasn't able to attend. A very generous gift from a friend, which I'm delighted by. So it's like handing somebody, here's an exhibition, all in a book. You couldn't get to it, but here it is for you. So this is Mamie Jellett and Evie Hone, The Art of Friendship. Fabulous. And the same friend who got me the art book got me this book, Bono on Bono, Conversations with Mitcha Asayas. And that's the other thing for friendship, that you get a book that you think you can discuss and that's going to open a conversation. And that's another lovely reason to have a book in your house. So looking at all the books I have bought over the years, there are some that I regret buying. They're not with me now, so I can't really show them to you. There are other books that I feel weren't fantastic, but I have kept because for some reason they were good or nearly good enough. So, for example, I have Vanessa Bell, The Life and Art of a Bloomsbury Radical, by Wendy Hitchman, which I began reading and thought, this is tremendous, it's so exciting. Then I read other books about Vanessa Bell and I went, oh, wait a minute. It balanced it out because the person who wrote this was coming across with a sense that The subject of the biography was incredibly important, key in all sorts of different things, and I just began to feel like, there's a bit of a positive bias there. So, but it's generally a good book, lots of good photographs, lots of good information, but it has to be balanced by being read with other books and maybe even her letters as well. Then there's a section of books called I Should Read. I wonder if you have something like that. So Italy, the Enduring Culture is, I know for a fact, certainly a good book on Italians and the land. But I was studying something with an overlap with Italian, and I asked for this for a recommendation, got the book, and haven't read it because I don't feel that I want to, as well as that I should. Then we come to the nearlies as well. We have the book I got because it paired well with another book by the same author. But this is, as you can see, a coffee table book. It's huge places in New York. So you look at it, you think, pretty, and the writing is well done, but it is really something just to glance at the pictures almost. And in a way, when you look at the pictures, there's such ostentatious wealth, you begin to question how they got their wealth, and it becomes quite an unsettling book in a different kind of way. Other regrettable purchases. The one you buy because everybody else is reading it and thinking it's fantastic. So you feel you need to take part in the conversation by buying the book. The Story of Art Without Men by Katie Hessel. It was a conversation topic about women not being recognised in art, but I began to read it, and started to underline where things were poorly put and badly written, and it just became a forest of frustration and underlinings. At the same time, I'm keeping it as a general reference book, but I have better books on women in art. Shortly before this book was published, I was in an art college library, and there's a whole shelf of books on women in art, as in women painters, women creators, women makers. And then that would be interspersed throughout that would also be the separate standalone books, monographs on the individual artists. So there's a tremendous amount of writing and books and research done on women artists before Katie Hessel came along, but she got the publicity, but the book is so badly written, I haven't been able to even read it all the way through. Another one, I'm not going to actually show you the book itself because that's not fair, but at one point I began tutoring creative writing courses, and I thought I should get books on how to do it and what you should teach. And I fell asleep with boredom virtually with every single one of them very quickly. So if it bored me, how was it going to be something interesting for my students? I ended up basically making my own course, and the students enjoyed it. Another way in which a book can become a regrettable purchase is when it's not like the talk. Yeah, I've seen somebody really fascinating on TV, and I thought, fantastic, I must get their book. And the book hasn't quite matched up. So for example, it's by my favourite author, presenter on the history of art, Andrew Graham Dixon. It's about Vermeer. There's genuinely new and useful information in this, new insights completely into the books, into the art pieces. The fact that often they were put in twos, the fact that the subject matter was often meditative, contemplative, and based on Bible parables and illustrations. So a whole new way of looking at Vermeer, tremendous amount of research, but about a third of it is the background, which is all about the wars in Holland, and it just overloads the book. When he gets to the art, he's just brilliant. But I had come to the book because I saw a fantastic talk he gave in a festival, in art literature festival in, I think it was Jaipur in India, which is just scintillating. I'll have to give a wee link so you can actually see it. So these are my not quite. I had to pause because the light came shining in brightly. Oh, it's doing it again, look. I'm becoming like the Transfiguration. really hard to get it right. And yet if I pull the curtains too, it becomes this gloomy, browny, creamy colour. So let's see how it goes. Oh, there we go. See? It calms down. Okay. Thinking about reasons for not finishing a book. For me, quite often it's because I read non-fiction, so there isn't that plot through where you go, what's going to happen next to the character, or in a mystery, who's going to find the body, or whatever. So, for example, I love this book, just my type of book about fonts, but each chapter is standalone and there's not the same feeling of, oh, I must read what happens next. And then a book that is also fabulous, I love it, Seeing Slowly, Looking at Modern Art by Michael Finley. It does literally invite you to go slowly through the book as well as thinking slowly about art, and so that's holding me back, but I will get to it. So in a sense, I suppose both of them are not DNF, did not finish, as in I've given up on that book and I'm not going to finish reading it, but they are in process, shall we say. I will say I do run a very fast and hard DNF policy early on in the book. I tend to read and quickly decide whether or not I want to finish it or not. A lot of DNFs are library books where I will be willing to take the risk and bring it home because I haven't purchased it, it's free, and try it out and see what happens. And then, of course, if a book doesn't match you and your interest, you can return it really, really quickly and nobody's lost anything. So that's where the most of my DNFs are actually found, returned to the library shelves. Now we come to the wonderful section, the unputdownable. I must keep reading this and I can't wait to find the next thing that's going to happen. And so, E.H. Gombrich, The Story of Art, does what it says in the tin, takes you through Western art mostly, and in a very understandable, readable way. There's not so many illustrations that it becomes hugely expensive, but there's enough that are key that really illustrate the point of that chapter. So, love that book. This writing home, Polly Devlin, her tone, her voice, her way of writing. She's the sister-in-law of Seamus Heaney, but she had won a competition in Vogue, so it's a different kind of writing, obviously. But it's that sense of coming from Northern Ireland, which is where I hail from as well. So there was that sense of recognition. Edith Wharton. When an author just takes you into the middle of a character, in the middle of changes in life, potential changes, what's going to happen, and you're aware of their body, how they're feeling, their emotions, their thoughts, and that they are trembling on the edge of making momentous decisions. The Age of Innocence, I read it recently and it was just, it's not too long, absolutely breathtaking. Also, this is very recent and it's still, you'll find it in your bookshops, Few and Far Between by Jan Carson, an imagined alternative reality in Northern Ireland where the lake in the middle has been drained to form communities, and it's a history of that. It's warm, it's got that sense of the local language and ways of being, and it also takes you through interesting characters and what's happening with them, what they think. It just is intriguing. I mean, I got this book and I read it through the night until I finished it. So that's what I think of as unputdownable. Also unputdownable are books that you read at just the right moment. I will always remember reading Wuthering Heights during a thunderstorm, alone at night, and it just was perfect weather for the book. Some people feel a withdrawal after a book and they miss it. I don't tend to feel that so much. I just enjoy it intensely at the time. I might think a bit about it afterwards, and the characters can remain with you over the years. But I do tend to reread but I don't tend to go into a feeling of, oh no, that book is finished. I don't think. Next. A quick think through why a book gets to us. Why is it exciting? And Steve Donaghy has referred to this as being like a current of electricity, an electricity bolt. And I want to show you some of the books that books that did that for me, and think about why any book does that for us. So the first book is an example of when people are talking about their lives in the moment at a particular time. And this is Ha Bloody Ha, Comedians Talking, William Cook. They are all comedians who are, this is them whenever they were in their 20s, they were trying to break through. They were starting to be known, and they've gone on to have a 30-year career ever since. But it's them in their own words. It's the interviews with them and just what they said and their whole different experiences in the same field. Fantastic. So it's got that immediacy. Another kind of way books get you gripped is the person who's writing it. So this for me, Hans Ulrich Obrist, Ways of Curating, because he is such an authority on curating from a very, very young age, and he's talked to all the famous people, and this is pulling on those interviews and giving his thoughts, and it's, I don't highlight books, this is highlighted and underlined. Just fantastic, and only he could write that book. Next, City Poet, The Life and Times of Frank O'Hara, Brad Gooch. This is an electrifying biography of a really interesting life that's full of connections with painters, being a curator in MoMA, full of being a poet himself. The whole era, the people around him are covered really well in such a way that you don't lose sight of the main subject, but yet you get a whole sense of New York in the 1950s and the excitement of the New York school. Just brilliant example of biography. Then another thing that intrigues me, and probably most people, is when somebody who's writing is deeply passionate, enthused, in love with living out their area of interest, and then they write a book about it. So this is about poetry, but it's by Edward Hirsch. How to Read a Poem and Fall in Love with Poetry. So that very title kind of makes you realise this is not just going to be a dry academic book. It's about falling in love with, it's about being passionate about, it's being concerned with, and it's written by somebody who really knows what he's writing about, and he's researched it for so long, he's been a poet for so long. It's just fantastic. I think Katie Hessel's book would have been fantastic if she'd had 25 to 30 years in art history and been a painter. It would have been phenomenal. But this is a great book. And this book I love so much because it's so well read. Romantic Moderns, Alexandra Harris. English writers, artists and the imagination, from Virginia Woolf to John Piper. So it's an area that really interests me, and you tend to get separate books on it. But she has combined it. So instead of having just a little book about a painter or about painters, and then a separate book about English country houses, or a separate book about the attractions living in the country, it's all together in one book, really well illustrated, and it's just so exciting a read because it's pulling all these things together. So those are the kind of things that get me enthused about the reading, the subject matter, and the person who's writing it, and the voice in it. The reasons why we have certain books in our houses or stored on a reader, e-reader, or whatever way is such an interesting topic. I'm just contributing to it with one point of view. There are many, many more, and there's obviously your own as well. And I hope this has been an interesting, thought-provoking video, and that you will contribute what you have found and what you like, what's important to you, into the general conversation about books. I'm Heather Gregg. Bye for now.